You said to me about the Christmas story, because we all think of this, just really quickly, I got to touch on this, is we all think of that night, Joseph and Mary going through this treacherous terrain and then giving birth in some barn.
Yeah.
Uh, with a cow standing over there going, got milk. You know, you just sat there and you really brought that to life. Real quick, just to recap on that.
Yeah.
Uh, what is, set us straight on that Christmas story, because I think people really need to know that.
Well, the problem why we have a Christmas story that's so far from accurate is because we don't actually read the text. We don't read the Bible. So the Christmas story that we celebrate today in America is not actually in the Bible. We have this idea that Mary and Joseph come rolling into Bethlehem in the middle of the night. She's going into labor. I mean, what an irresponsible husband. I mean, it's just terrible, right? And we don't understand Middle Eastern culture. We don't actually read the text. All the Bible tells us, if you actually read the text, is while they were in Bethlehem, the time had come for the baby to be born. That's all it says. So if you actually look at the story in context, they were in Bethlehem for a few months before the delivery of the baby. They were there for a period of time. And we know this because the Bible says they placed the baby in a manger and there was no room for them in the upper room, in the guest room. And the reason why there was no room is it was a very small room for a bride and groom. Very likely it was Joseph's father's house that they were living in. There's no room in the upper room because in the first century, the most dangerous time for a woman is childbirth. Women die during childbirth because of all the complications. So you need midwives, you need nurses, you need family, friends supporting. There's not enough room in their bridal chamber, this little bedroom that Mary and Joseph lived in. So they moved in the living room. The reason we know it's the living room is because they put them in a manger. And if you look at first century architecture in Israel, mangers were kept in the living room in poor families because you brought your animals in at night. You didn't want your milk goat, the most valuable possession you have, to be stolen. Just like we have garages in America and you park your nice car in the garage so that it's not vandalized or stolen in the middle of the night. They brought their milk cow in the middle of the night, put mangers in the living room. So if he got hungry, he didn't wake up the rest of the family. And it's all right there in the text. We don't read it. And so what we have is a story of Christmas that comes from the proto-evangelism of James, which was written around AD 200 or 300, which is one of the Gnostic Gospels not accepted by the early fathers because it wasn't authenticated as being historically accurate. And yet we kept this tradition on for years. And so you've got these plays where there's this innkeeper says there's no room in the inn. Well, the truth is,
didn't have Hampton Inn or
no, there is no hotel in the Christmas story. Read all four Gospels. Everything you can find about Christmas, there is no hotel in the Christmas story. If you look at the Greek language, the word that Luke uses, there's no room. It's the word for an upper room or a guest room on a house. Luke knows the Greek word for hotel because in Luke chapter 10, the story of the Good Samaritan, he uses a far different Greek word for the Good Samaritan that brings the guy to the hotel. That's a different Greek word than the Christmas story. The Christmas story is the same word that Jesus uses at the end when he tells the disciples, go get the upper room ready to have the Lord's Supper. It's just an attached room onto a main house. And so Mary and Joseph didn't have the most dramatic childbirth the way we like to celebrate. But here's what that tells us. We think that God can only show up in the dramatic moments of our life. The reality is Jesus can show up in the very routine, the very mundane, the very normal and ordinary moments of your life, as well as the dramatic moments. And the Christmas story was not as dramatic as we want it to be. It was very ordinary. It was a Middle Eastern family giving birth in the living room of their home with a lot of family present, putting Jesus in a manger. He wasn't the first baby in a manger. Everybody kept their babies in mangers because they made a perfect crib.
So Joseph was actually from Jerusalem, correct?
Bethlehem. Because in the first century, you pay taxes where you live. So Mary lived in Nazareth. Joseph lived in Bethlehem. His family was in Bethlehem. His home was in Bethlehem. And think about Middle Eastern culture. Like you're
So
Italian.
it wasn't like it wasn't like he was knocking on every door. He already had a home there that his family lived.
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
look what Luke says. You're Italian, you'll understand this. Luke
Yeah.
says Joseph is of the house of David. Joseph is royalty. He's of the house of David. He's in Bethlehem, the city of David. Would any Middle Eastern family in the first century turn away a pregnant woman that is royalty out of their home? No. They would throw their kids out on the street before they turned away a pregnant woman. The hospitality culture in the Middle Eastern was so incredible that there's no way they would have ever been turned away as royalty in his hometown. So
I think that was the culture back then, and I wish it was still now. People opened up their houses for people in need, but like you 100%. Said, already, yeah.
But he already lived there, so he didn't need it.
Was from Bethlehem or not, they would have opened that house a long time for her.
What most scholars, archaeologists, and historians believe is they were in Bethlehem 3 to 6 months before the baby was born. And the reason is you do not travel with a pregnant woman that distance and that period of time in the third trimester. It's too painful and too difficult.
Now, is it painful on the man, or you meant the terrain?
I mean, it's just, can you imagine your third trimester?
The whole way through,
yeah,
right?
Imagine your third trimester of pregnancy traveling across that type of terrain. It wouldn't have happened. And plus, they needed to get Mary out of Nazareth because she's pregnant. She's not married. There's a lot of scandal. There's a lot of shame. So they moved to a different town. And if you look at the Greek language, the nuance of the Greek language, the wedding ceremony happens before the birth of Jesus. They're legally married before the birth of Jesus. If you read Luke's gospel in the original Greek language, you see it in there.
Were they married in Nazareth, or were they married in Bethlehem?
It seems to indicate they were married in Bethlehem, at Joseph's family's property, family's home, and that's where Joseph's family was, and that's typically where the marriage would have taken place.
Well, I mean, just to really, we can probably go on for hours on this story, right?
Yeah.
And we will come back to it some other time, because you did send me pictures of what what do you call it? A manger, or where this would have taken place because of what they've recovered.
Yeah, we have archaeological finds of first century homes around Jerusalem, and you see mangers in the living room of the home. See, a wealthy person would have had a stable or a barn for their animals, and a wealthy person would have had cribs made for children. Jesus was put in a manger, which tells us Jesus was not born into a wealthy family. He was born into a poor family. And the shepherds, who are the lowest caste of society, the angels say, you'll find him, lying in a manger. Well, the shepherds had believed for a Messiah figure to come for hundreds of thousands of years because of the Old Testament prophecy. Now, in a shepherd's mind, the Messiah is going to be born to a governor, a king. He's going to be born into royalty. He's going to be born into a noble, important family. There's no way a shepherd, being the lowest caste of society, would ever be invited into a home like that. So the angel points out a detail to the shepherds to help the shepherds understand, no, you will be welcome to go visit the baby, because he's born in a home just like your home. He's born to a poor family, not a wealthy family. That's why the angel said you'll find him lying in a manger. It's a very important detail of what the angels did there to basically tell the shepherds, you will be welcome.
Wow. It does. It gets fascinating. And if by chance, if you get to, will you send me a picture of that
Absolutely.
I can't even say it, archaeological
find, whatever you want to call it. I will definitely.
Yeah, because I want to post it on this podcast too, so people can, once you get a visual of that, you'll understand exactly what Pastor Aaron is talking about.